Now going back to working papers. When the file is complete and most everything is signed off in my file and ready to be locked down, what I can do is select the engagement lockdown option. Under the engagement menu, I have lockdown. Now, I then can complete the lockdown wizard as needed. So we're going to look at the lockdown properties, and we have, first of all, lockdown now. This will lock the file down immediately, and I'm not quite ready to do that. The second option that I have available to me is to lock down the file after the document completion date. Now, this will lock down the file after a period of time based on the jurisdiction and the type of company that we're dealing with. So the jurisdiction here on the drop-down, I have from Australia down to the United States, and of course, jurisdictions in between. This is stored in an XML file that's in the Caseware program directory that can be extended in the event that you're outside of these regions or you need a different jurisdiction type and number of days based on your jurisdiction and type. I'm going to leave mine at US. Right now it's set to public, which is my default, and you can see based on my report release date of today, there's 45 days until lockdown. Now if I change that from public to non-public, I have a 60-day rule. And if I change it from non-public to private New York, it's once again a 45-day rule. So again, depending on your jurisdiction and the type that you're dealing with, let's say Canada for a moment, I've got public, which is a 45-day rule. Public CAS gives me a 60-day rule. Non-public gives me a 45-day rule. And non-public CAS gives me a 60-day rule. So again, depending on your jurisdiction and type and your audit report date, your lockdown date will be calculated accordingly. Now I'm going to click Next here, and that gives me my lockdown considerations. Now there are up to 4 lockdown considerations that will display in this area. Cleanup is not displaying right now, but it will when we do the Lockdown Now feature a little bit later. The other 3 considerations are the ability to run year-end close. Now with working papers, you can run year-end close either before or after you do the lockdown. It doesn't matter which way you do it because we're not changing the current year file, so if it's locked down, we're not changing it. We can still do a year-end close into a new file. I'm not going to do that right now. The second lockdown consideration that's displayed here is the ability to delete selected files found in the client directory that are not displayed on the document manager. So wherever I've got this client folder in Windows Explorer, it's found 4 files that are not currently displayed on my document manager. So I may want to clean those up and get rid of them so I don't have extra information carried over into next year that I don't need. Now my comparison chart comes from my imports, and I like to maintain that from year to year. So I'm going to deselect that one, but the other 3 I don't need, and I will delete them. Now the last lockdown consideration being displayed is the ability to copy selected document links into the client directory. And what's happened is it's found 2 documents on my document manager that were brought in as shortcuts, 5K and 5L. And if we look down here and look closely at the document icon, you'll see that little shortcut graphic indicating that these are shortcut documents pointing outside of my client folder. Well, we can't lock down a shortcutted document. The document has to be a real document within the client file. So it's always best to check that off, to copy the selected document links into the client directory and not have them as shortcuts in order to lock them down properly with this year's engagement. And remember, the lockdown applies to the year end, not between periods within a fiscal year. So when I click Next, it then tells me what's going to happen. It's going to delete these 3 documents that it found in the client folder but not in the document manager. And the 2 documents that are set up as shortcuts will be copied into the document manager for me. So keep your eye on 5K and 5L when we finish up here, because when I click Finish, the shortcut goes away and it becomes a copy of the original document. On top of that, if we look down in the status bar, we can see a new icon in the status bar, which is my lockdown status, and it's telling me that there's 60 days until lockdown. Before we wait 60 days, of course we're not going to wait that long, let's check the lockdown status once again in Caseware Tracker. So going back to Casework Tracker, I'm just going to hit the refresh button here to reach out to the working paper file, and now we can see that the lockdown status is pending. It's a non-public CAS from Canada, and my lockdown date is set to April 20th. And so Tracker is going to allow me to keep track of what's going on with my files that are getting ready to be locked down, or are locked down, or are not locked down, and I can do that through my lockdown view. And of course we can change the properties within Tracker to get the different columns that we wish to see, and how we want to sort and group these things is all available within the settings of that particular view. I'm going to just click OK, cancel that for now, and let's return back to working papers. Now, we know which documents are going to be locked down after 60 days. So let's assume for a moment that we're finished with this file, we just close it and walk away from it. And on the 60th or 61st day or any day thereafter, when the first person accesses file after the lockdown date, it will tell them that the file has to be locked down and ask them to wait a moment. The lockdown cannot be stopped once it's started. And it will then run the lockdown on the entire file and lock down those documents that have been marked for lockdown. Now we're going to go back to the lockdown wizard because we're not going to wait 60 days to see that happen. If I go back to engagement and choose lockdown once again, well, now I've got to enter my password because I set up a lockdown password. Fortunately, I know it, so I'll just type it in and click OK. And that gets me back into the engagement lockdown wizard. Now at this point, I have the ability to modify my settings for my lockdown at a specific date. Maybe it should have been US, maybe it should have been public 45 days. Alternatively, I can remove the pending lockdown, or I can choose to lock down now. Now at this point, I would like to lock down the file, so I'm going to choose lockdown now and click next. Now, once again, it will offer up to 4 lockdown considerations. The one we're not seeing this time is the lockdown consideration regarding shortcuts because I no longer have any shortcuts on my document manager. But it does give me the option to run the cleanup, and I can choose to retain history and milestones or not. Actually, I don't wish to retain those. I can run the year-end close, which I'm not going to do right now anyways. And I can once again delete any files that were found in the client directory that are not on the document manager. And I'm not going to worry about that because I like to keep this one in my client file folder. So when I click next now, it takes me into my lockdown context. And if you recall, I was talking about the context toolbar a little bit earlier today because I wanted to let you know where this information is being pulled from. So when a document is locked down, a milestone is taken of that document. And within the document properties, we have the ability to choose settings that determine what is presented on that document. 3 of those settings include the context, the period, and the language that we're going to see the information show up in. So we have the option at this point to change the milestone to fit our needs. Now I'm going to leave it at the top level for my entities. I'm going to leave it at yearly for my period, and I'm going to leave it on English for my language. But again, we do have the option to change those if necessary. When I click next, it tells me it's going to do the cleanup. History and milestones will be deleted. And had any documents been marked for being deleted on cleanup, they would be listed here as well. So we'd know that, and I could cancel before I finished. I'm going to hit finish, and that's going to clean up all of the history. I'll say yes. And at this point, it's going to flash on the screen a little bit. But it is saving the milestones for every document that has been marked to save as a milestone. Now the previous wizard did say this could take a lot of time. However, it typically takes 15-20 seconds, maybe a little bit longer if you have a lot of case view documents and things like that in the document manager. So mine is taking a little bit of time as we work our way through, and it's just finishing up with those milestones. It does have to take a digital representation of each one of those documents, and that digital representation, that milestone, is going to be saved on the History tab of each and every document in the Document Manager. A lockdown milestone cannot be deleted from the working paper file, nor can a lockdown document. At this point, the lockdown has been completed. On the Document Manager, for those documents that have been locked down, we can see a padlock icon attached to the document icon, letting us know it's been locked. Also, locked documents are gray on the Document Manager, as opposed to unlocked documents, which are black on the Document Manager and have black text there. Now, if we look down at the status bar, I've got a padlock there with no clock. This file is locked down, and if I go back to Tracker one more time and just refresh it, we'll see that the status is changed to locked down, even though my pending lockdown date was for the 19th of, actually that's today, that's my lockdown date. I was going to say April 20th there, but that my lockdown date, again, Canada, non-public, and it's locked down today. So once again, Tracker is keeping up to date with the changes in the working paper file and allows us to then sort through what files are up for lockdown, which files are locked down, etc.